So if the last 100 years of technological progress is any indication as to where we're going next, then we have reasons to be excited. Just look at this little computer that we all carry around everywhere. You know that the iPhone is 100 million times faster than the most powerful computers used during the Apollo moon mission. Think about that. Theoretically, your iPhone could guide over 100 million Apollo-era spacecraft to the moon all at the same time. Now, I don't think there's quite just an app that exists where you can do that, but we are using this immense computing power every single day in ways that were deemed impossible in the not-so-distant past. We're good. So, but the rate of technological progress has been staggeringly exponential. The human mind has struggled to keep up. And this is ironic because the human mind itself is the source of this innovation. But you know what? Perhaps the deeper and sadder irony is that despite all of this material progress, human beings are still grappling with issues that have plagued us for thousands of years. Issues of identity, issues of connection, of belonging, of meaningful interactions. And we can't ignore this anymore because all this neglect of the inner world, the world of emotions and meaningful human connection, has manifested, right? We're living in a global mental health crisis right now. There's many reports that suggest that the rates of depression, anxiety, loneliness are all at record levels. And even beyond the macro level trends, there's this creeping sense that something is wrong in the way that we interact with our everyday consumer technology, right? Whether it's declining attention spans, low levels of presence or energy, or our frenzied social media behaviors where we're just doing anything for the next like, share, or comment. There's just such a disconnect between the way that we behave and interact online versus how we're behaving in the physical world, right? If the ideals of the internet and handheld devices the ideal was and the vision was to unite us and bring us together, then why is there so much hate online? Why is there so much negativity and aggression? Why are we still lonely, right? We each have hundreds, if not thousands, of social media friends and followers who we can technically connect with but through just a click of a button, and yet we still feel lonely and alone. And I think ultimately it boils down to that issue of connection. There are millions of ways to connect with people all around the world now, but do we feel more connected to them, or even to ourselves for that matter? Now the general consensus is no. No, we don't. There's more information than ever before, but a lot of this has come at the cost of personal meaning. So where do we go from here, But what's really, really reassuring is that the world is waking up to this reality. It's waking up to the fact that we have neglected our inner worlds and we need to meet the needs of our inner worlds, which is why that a lot of ancient practices, whether it's yoga, meditation, or mindfulness, are all gaining traction. There's a very promising conversation and inquiry into mental health that's happening all around the world. I don't know if you guys saw just a few days ago, the world's first minister for loneliness was appointed in the UK. And this move was inspired by a 2017 health report that suggested that loneliness is as harmful for health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So this is all promising. This is definitely a step in the right direction, but we need to do a lot more because the problem is more complex than ever before. And that's in part to the sophistication of our consumer technology. We are living in multiple worlds now. We have so many different online profiles and identities. In some ways, we are all just brands constantly curating ourselves, for this external approval and the next dopamine hit. And it's become numbing and exhausting. Think about it. When was the last time you went on a social media site such as Facebook or Instagram and felt a sense of happiness or joy or peace. This is a problem. And it's not that one product or one company is to blame. It's the point is that our entire process and approach is completely broken. We need more humanity and human values and ethics in the way that we are going about innovation. We need to start focusing on the things that actually matter. Our interior lives, our sense of purpose, our belonging, our well-being, the connections that we hold close. And we can't afford to ignore these things anymore. So, obviously I'm not standing here and saying that I have the solution to all these problems. The point is that one person cannot have all the answers. But I want to humbly present a framework today, a mental model that involves creativity and collaboration in order to bring more meaning to human interaction. So this is a TEDx audience, so you guys are very familiar with the terms creativity and collaboration. So is most of the world for that matter. And what's funny is that it's only because of our human ability to be creative and collaborate that's helped us evolve beyond all other species, right? If there's this amazing book that I'm reading right now, I'm a little late to the party. I mean, I think everyone was reading it a couple of years ago, but it's called *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. And he talks a lot about this. One really memorable analogy he shares is that, human beings, we are a lot weaker and physically less able than lions and tigers. And yet we have somehow risen to the top of the food chain, not them. And this happened because we were just a lot more coordinated, right? We could work together and build solutions and weapons to help protect ourselves. We organized movements, we built cities, we played politics, we invented the craziest technology, we made currencies. Now, all these innovations, what's very interesting, and he talks about this, that all these innovations are not biological truths, or they weren't naturally occurring in the environment. They all started out as human ideas, stories, fictions, pigments of the human imagination that ultimately materialized, gained a lot of traction, and then became part of our everyday realities. And what's really, really important to note here is that the only reason they materialized and we were able to build structures around them was because we collaborated. It was our collaboration that summoned these great ideas that took our lives to the next level, and it was only because of collaboration that we summoned them into existence. So, collaborative creativity, it helps explain a lot of how we got to where we are and what makes humans human. And these ideas have also really guided and inspired me as an entrepreneur in my latest venture called Haiku Jam. And the idea for Haiku Jam, it started a couple of years ago when I was in a London tea shop feeling very sad. I was feeling down. Another startup had not quite worked out, and I was feeling pretty depressed. I just didn't know what to do with myself. So my best friend, he decided to treat me to a cup of tea. So we went into this little place in Piccadilly that I really loved and ordered this cup of tea called Lapsang Souchong, which is a deliciously smoky Chinese tea. I really recommend you try it, though you probably won't get it in Pilani. You may have to go to Delhi for that. So there we were, waiting for this tea to arrive, and just on a whim, I took out my journal, a notebook, and I wrote the first line of a haiku poem. Now, haiku is a form of minimalistic three-line poetry that comes from ancient Japan. And I wrote the first line, and I still don't know why I did this, but I pushed the notebook towards my best friend Shubham, and I asked him to write the next line. So he did, and then I wrote the final line. And for the next 2 hours, that's all we were doing in complete silence, which maybe from an external observer's perspective looked quite odd. But it was incredible. For me, it was incredibly therapeutic. It was cathartic. I just wanted to get out of my own head. I wasn't satiated enough by my own thoughts. And it was so inspiring to see how the thought, my incomplete thought, evolved in a way that I would never have dreamt. And by the end of that session, I had this immense urge to connect with people around the world through creativity. What if I could send out a line and a school teacher in South Korea could write the next. And then a student or an artist in San Francisco. What if I could say the things that I would never have said with the people I would never have met? Now this urge, it led to Haiku Jam, which is a platform where strangers all around the world write poems together. And we've come a long way since that afternoon in the tea shop drinking Lapsang Souchong with Shubham. The Haiku Jam community now spans across 120 countries. A line is published every single second in our app, and over 4 million jams have been published to date. But what is infinitely more exciting than the product, the technology, it's the Haiku Jam community. It's always inspires me to see how so many people from all walks of life are connecting and expressing themselves and forming the most unexpected of bonds and relationships. You know, yesterday I came from Bombay and I flew into Delhi. And whenever I arrive in Delhi now, I really smile and feel very good. And it's not because we have thousands and thousands of jammers there. I mean, that's great, of course. But I remember this very specific group of people that met in Haiku Jam. They were, you know, the earliest members of our community. And what's very, very interesting about these people is how different they look. You know, there's about 10 of them. They're 10 friends. And the youngest is, I think, 16 or 17, and she's in high school. And the oldest is a mother of 2, and she's a housewife. And when you watch them interact, you feel as though these guys must have known each other, you know, their entire lives. Maybe they're even family. It looks like they're on a family outing, a family vacation. And it inspires me to know that these guys met in Haiku Jam through a line of poetry. And they're not just friends, they're not just close, they're like kindred spirits. You know, they are more than family. And I guess that really, whenever I go through Delhi, it reminds me of why we're doing what we are doing. It's incredible just how you forge such unexpected, I wouldn't even say connections, these are bonds. These are much, much deeper than static, you know, connections. And I was also very excited to come to BITSPilani, not because you guys are awesome and great, that is true, but because when we launched Haiku Jam, we were in London, and we were planning to be in London or in San Francisco. And then we had this little organic spike of traction in India. And at the time, we didn't think much of it. We thought, okay, some people have discovered it on the App Store, and they're enjoying themselves. Great. 3-4 months later, we couldn't ignore that little spike, because it wasn't a little spike. Most of our, jammers were coming out of India, and we were receiving so many emails, so many tweets, so many poems inside of the app. They were inviting us to come and, get to know them better. And we thought that maybe these guys were poets, right? Maybe they were writers. Maybe they were, publishers who were thinking about digital. And that wasn't the case. They were actually engineering students at colleges just like this one. And this really threw us off guard, We just thought, what is happening? Why are these guys writing poems to other? Again, it's wonderful that they are. That's really good for the platform. But why is this happening? Why has Haiku Jam culturally resonated? So rather than look at a dashboard of metrics and try and understand, we got out into the real world. We came to Delhi. We took a flight. And we went to campuses and we interacted and we tried, we had some really wonderful conversations. And again, we were so inspired by these. We were hearing so many stories from people who were saying that, look, I'm in engineering school now, but as a kid, I used to write. I used to make music. I wanted to be an actor. But then I had to get into BITSPilani and I had to devote the next 4 years to that. So there was no more time to be really creative. There was no more time for hobbies as such. And with Haiku Jam, all I have to do is send out a couple of lines a day, and the world will jam with me. It's a wonderful way to stay in touch with your creativity, and you don't have to invest a lot of time, right? And the return on your investment of time is when people interact with you and take your expression in a completely newfound direction. And and then what's fascinating, what's great about this is that you're not just being creative. Often when you think of the lone artist or creative person, you may think of a writer in front of their laptop, right, in their basement or in their bedroom, or an artist with an easel. You don't really think of a collective. You don't think of a lot of people at the same time being creative together. But that's what Haiku Jam is. Ultimately, you're being creative and you're discovering new people and new ideas in the process. So the community is wonderful. There are incredible stories, and there's just a lot of love and emotion, right, within the platform and the interactions. And more recently, as a team, we wanted to understand these interactions better. We wanted to understand what are the underlying words, what are the underlying emotions behind those words. Haiku Jam is a place where, you're never alone, your voice matters, and you can belong. And underlying all of that, there are these fascinating emotional threads. So a few weeks ago, we ran a series of sentiment analysis experiments using natural language processing. Essentially, we wanted to understand how's the Haiku Jam community feeling about 2017, the year just gone, and how are they feeling about 2018, the year that lies ahead. And after some mining, we found out two very interesting things. The first was that people were a lot more positive about 2017 than we had expected, right? Especially when you consider the underlying negative news events that took place in the year. Everything in the news cycle was pretty gloomy and dreary, and yet people were still positive, which was inspiring for us. And the second thing that we learned, which was a lot more exciting, was the fact that jamming, specifically collaboration, seemed to be lifting the mood of the individual interactions. We learned that the ratio of positive to negative sentiment across jams, across the 3-line poems, was 20% higher than the same ratio across individual lines. Right? So this would suggest that by working together, by collaborating in a creative context, this is bringing out the best that we have to offer and literally lifting our inner worlds. So collaborative creativity is wonderful, right? It's really great to interact with people in such a way. You leave feeling with a sense of productivity, of inspiration, and you discover all sorts of incredible people in the process. But what I'd love for you to take away today, the core message I'd love for you to take away today is this: that ultimately we need more humanity, more story, and more human values in the technology that we're building. We don't need more algorithms that are fighting for our engagement just to sell us more advertising, right? We need algorithms that are actually fighting for our happiness. We can't lose sight of our inner worlds. I think that if we ever crack the problem of sending rockets to the moon and to Mars from our phones, that's great and that's incredible, but I think we have some bigger problems to solve before then. We need to start building models and processes into innovation where human values, where ethics and a sense of humanity, that's a priority. And this isn't just naive idealism. Ultimately, this makes business sense in the long run. Because when you suddenly make, human connection and meaning a mandate, it means that new business models will emerge. Tech companies won't no longer have to drug people into just getting their engagement and then selling them ads. People will happily pay for experiences that enrich their inner worlds, that bring more meaning to their lives. And look, ultimately, we're not here for very long, right? Life is a journey from the first breath that you take in when you're born to the last breath that you exhale. Whether it's 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. That's it. And we don't control a lot. There's just most things in the universe that we have very, very little control over. The only thing that we have a lot of agency over is how we use our time, how we think, and how we use our hearts. So let's not fritter away the time doing things that just don't matter or pursuing power or money. Rather than that, let's dive deep, let's be present, and let's build for meaning. Thank you very much.